Hey everybody, Tori here from Overlook Horizon. Good to see you again. Happy Super Blue Blood Moon Wednesday. We're Wednesday, right? Yeah. So we got an eventful day here today. Had the big Super Blue Blood Moon this morning, which we streamed live and got up real nice and early to take a look at. And now we got the SpaceX launch for GovSat-1. Going up hopefully at 4:25 p.m. Eastern Time, which is in about 25 minutes from now. So we're going to hang out here for a little while, take a peek at some stuff I've got, talk some SpaceX, maybe talk some Falcon Heavy, maybe talk some of the Super Blue Blood Moon stuff. It's a mouthful. So anyways, I see my voice seems to be going crazy loud here. But anyways, if it gets too loud or too quiet or whatever it is, let me know. I'm still trying to mess with this the new audio levels. I don't want to be too quiet. I don't want to be too loud. So you let me know. I got my headphones on because when we start the SpaceX broadcast, I will have the broadcast going on. We'll kind of let it hang up here in the corner here for a little while until they actually get up and running. And then once they get up and running, we'll kind of do some commentary on what they've got going on. Hopefully everything goes on track. We tried to do this a couple times now. We successfully did it for Ariane Space. We tried to do it for the ULA launch a couple of weeks ago. That one got scrubbed, so that didn't work out so well. But now we're gonna hang out and do it again for SpaceX. This will be another kind of practice run for us for the big event, which is coming up next week, which is the Falcon Heavy launch, the long-awaited Falcon Heavy that was supposed to launch. I forget when it was. I think it was announced in like 2011, 2012. Was supposed to launch in like 2013, 2014, somewhere in there. But now here we are, 2018, and Falcon Heavy is finally on the launch pad, just about ready to go. That's coming up next week on Tuesday for the Falcon Heavy launch, Tuesday at 1:30 in the afternoon Eastern Time. So it is kind of an odd time, but we are going to live stream it. Hopefully, I don't know how well that stream is going to go, just because. The stream should be fine, but I have a feeling there could be a scrub there. Maybe many scrubs. I don't know. This is an experimental vehicle. They've never launched it before, so who knows if this is going to actually work out and launch as they expect. But today we should have a pretty I want to say routine. I hate using that word when it comes to rocket launches, because routine. I don't think any of the rockets are really routine. Just look at. Look at Ariane Space that had 82 successful flights, and then last week when they launched, they lost communication with their satellites, and we were streaming that live, and we didn't know what was going on. So just when you think it's routine, something doesn't go right. So Mayor on YouTube, they're launching a Tesla Roadster as a payload. Yeah, I think that's kind of awesome. A Tesla Roadster as a payload. I mean, it really serves no purpose other than to say, look what I can do. I think that's pretty awesome. It's reportedly Elon Musk's personal, what is it, like cherry red Roadster, pretty much the color of my shirt. Maybe a little darker, but it's his Roadster that they're launching as the payload. And I forget what the music is. They're playing some music on the stereo system, apparently. I don't really know what the purpose of that is, other than because once it gets in the vacuum of space, so what good is music going to do you? But it is still a pretty cool payload to put the Falcon Heavy up into. It's going to be in heliocentric orbit, so it's going out there. This is the vehicle that will potentially take a couple people around the moon later this year. Maybe start bringing things, who knows if there's going to be any delays, and if we're going to start getting people and equipment to Mars in the next couple of years. So this could be the vehicle that does that, is the Falcon Heavy that goes next week. So yeah, definitely some pretty exciting times for SpaceX, and they're kind of pretty rapid fire here in terms of launches. On the pad right now they have Falcon 9, which is what's launching today. That's on pad 40. And then Falcon Heavy is on 39A, just a couple of 100 feet adjacent to it. So they got 2 rockets on the pad right now that they're going to be launching here with less than a week of each other, potentially, if Falcon Heavy goes on time. So yeah, definitely some pretty exciting times for Falcon, or for SpaceX rather. So what we're looking at today, like I said, is going to be what's called GovSat-1. It's as routine as it gets for SpaceX. I hate using that word, but this is a communications satellite for the government of Luxembourg. So this is going to go into, I think what they said was super synchronous orbit. And it's just a regular Falcon 9 like they've done many times now. But a couple things to note that are of interest for this particular launch. The first thing is they will not be recovering the first stage. They're not going to be landing it on their drone ship. So this is going into a very high orbit. So normally if they were going to recover this, they would have their autonomous drone ship, or space, what do they call it? The ASDS, the Autonomous Spaceport Drone Ship, ASDS. And the name of it is, of course, I Still Love You. And normally they would have that out in the ocean and they would try to land that first stage, but not this time. They are not landing the first stage this time. Presumably, I've heard a couple conflicting reports. I don't know if it's the initial report I heard is they didn't want to try to land that and they wanted to keep the drone ship, of course, I Still Love You, in port so that it could be ready for Falcon Heavy come next week. So looks like SpaceX is gearing up. I guess it's on that side of me. They're gearing up here, so the broadcast is just getting ready to start. We'll get that turned up. I got the volume off here right now. That'll be the hard part for me audio-wise. Gotta make sure I can get that audio right. But so they will not have that autonomous drone ship out in the ocean waiting for this that first stage. However, something interesting is they have the landing legs and grid fins affixed to the Falcon 9 that's launching today. So I don't know what the story is with that. Typically if the landing legs were affixed and the grid fins were affixed to it, then they would be landing it. But they've said no landing today, but presumably what that means is they're going to do some controlled tests on the way down and just do a soft landing, or water landing basically, which means they're going to come down and pretend to land it, and then it's going to hit the water and explode, because the pressurized tanks are just going to explode once they hit the water. So I would expect, and I kind of hope, I don't know what they're going to show on the broadcast today, whether they will actually show that first stage controlled landing. I kind of hope they do, because that would be fun to see. We're probably going to see a rocket explode, or at least the first stage of the rocket explode when it comes in for that controlled landing. So they've got the landing legs, which aren't going to do much on water, but they do have the grid fins. The grid fins are those giant waffle maker looking pads on the side of the Falcon 9 that control their aerodynamic control surfaces that help basically steer that first stage on the way down, and that's what they would normally use to land on the drone ship. But no drone ship landing today. So let's see. Let me make sure we're on track. So they were, just as I was starting the broadcast, they were at the point where they were loading liquid oxygen into the Falcon 9. So let's see. So I was just reading. I wanted to read a report. Said everything's going well so far. We had their first major vent of liquid oxygen from the Falcon 9 just a few moments ago. So it sounds like everything is progressing normally here. So we'll see if we're on track and that we go for a 4:25 p.m. launch, which is in about 15 minutes from now. That's the opening of the launch window. The launch window does go until 6:45 p.m. Eastern time. So there is a big window there where they could potentially have, if they had delays, they have some wiggle room. But so far, no delays that I've heard of. So we were supposed to launch yesterday, is what we were originally on track for. But yesterday they had some pretty high winds. Kind of knew they were going to scrub all day. They said like 40% chance of launch yesterday, and they had those high winds going on. So they scrubbed it yesterday because of the high winds. They lowered Falcon 9 down horizontally onto the launch pad yesterday so they could replace a transducer. So apparently they also had a faulty transducer that they replaced yesterday or overnight, I suppose last night. So they lowered Falcon 9 horizontal, replaced the transducer, and put it back to vertical today. But everything looks to be in good shape today so far. So let's take a look at a couple things here that we've got lined up. Let's see. Hopefully my audio is all right. Yeah, so what we're looking at here, this is GovSat-1. This is from Orbital ATK. This is the communication satellite for the government of Luxembourg. That's basically what we're putting into orbit today. That's doing secure military communications. Looks like we got our SpaceX broadcast is just about to start here. So usually they start this broadcast when there's about 15 minutes to launch time. So it looks like we're about 15 minutes from launch time, which is about right. So 4:12, they said 4:25 is when they're going to launch. So we're just a couple minutes away here from launch. So let me make this a little bigger, and then I'll put my headphones on. See if we can get this going here. I got to see if I can get you some audio. Let's see, where is that?
Live webcast of the GovSat-1 mission. It's the middle of the day here in Hawthorne, so people are gathered to watch the launch and making a bit of noise. I'm Michael Hammersley, a materials engineer in our avionics department. And today, SpaceX is making a second attempt at launching GovSat-1 into a geostationary transfer orbit from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. We scrubbed yesterday's launch attempt in order to replace a sensor on the second stage. Today's launch window is about 2 hours long, and we have a backup launch window at the same time tomorrow, starting again at 4:25 Eastern or 9:25 Universal Time.
Yeah, so hopefully we don't have to go, hopefully they don't end up scrubbing today. Looks like pretty clear skies today, so hopefully everything is good to go. They're supposed to just have light winds. They said weather-wise, chance of launch was more than 90%. So really, I think the thing that we're looking out for here, that we're hoping for to not scrub the mission, is mechanical or failure with the ground systems or the rocket itself. So, Mayor, what do you think about SpaceX last mission Zuma? Was it a failure or success? That's a good question. I don't know. I think it was a failure, but there's definitely some odd communications about it, on whether or not it actually failed. Nobody really wants to come out and say it failed, which it was classified. I guess I understand why they wouldn't want to come out and say that it failed, but I tend to be one of the, I kind of believe what I'm told. So I think it failed, unfortunately. From what it sounds like, the Zuma mission, which was the last SpaceX launch, first one in 2018, that was, sorry, the guy's talking in my ear, I can't. So the Zuma mission was the first launch 2018 for SpaceX. That mission basically Falcon 9 got it to orbit, and then normally it's SpaceX's job or Falcon 9's job to actually detach the payload and insert it into orbit. But in this case, for the Zuma mission, they were Northrop Grumman, which made the satellite. Basically, they made their own payload adapter, so it was their responsibility to actually put the satellite into orbit. And so reportedly, it didn't go into orbit. None of the satellite tracking systems that we have, either amateur or professional, even classified satellites, like we know where they are. We might not know what they do, but usually we know where they are. And none of those have it tracked. So yeah, I don't know. Success or failure? I tend to think failure, but maybe that's just because I believe what I'm told. I don't know. That's what I think.
Stage to get the satellite up to orbital speeds. The first stage has 9 Merlin engines, which is why we call it Falcon 9, and is about 2/3 the overall height of the rocket. The main job of that first stage is to get us out of the densest portion of Earth's atmosphere, and it will accelerate GovSat-1 as well as the second stage to the edge of space at a few thousand miles per hour. At that point, the first and second stage will separate. The second stage will continue accelerating GovSat-1 up to speeds of about 17,000 miles per hour. In today's mission, we will not be recovering the first stage.
All right, so interesting note that they did say, like I mentioned earlier, they're not recovering that first stage, but no mention of any sort of test or whether or not they're going to do a controlled soft landing, which I believe they're doing, presumably because they got the landing legs and the grid fins on it. You can see the landing legs. I don't know. Oh, you can see my mouse, right? You can see my mouse here. So here's one of the landing legs here on the side, and these are the grid fins up here at the top of the first stage. So normally they would only have those if they were going to do a controlled landing. So
is now at about 99% full in both the first and second stages. Liquid oxygen load began 30 minutes ago, and we are looking at about 95% complete in the first stage and 90% complete in the second stage. The range is currently a go, as well as the payload, which transitioned to internal power about 30 minutes ago. Weather-wise, we've been sending balloons up to gauge the upper altitude winds, which are looking good. We've been keeping an eye on the thickness and height of some stratocumulus clouds, and you can see them on the screen there. We don't want those clouds to be high enough or cold enough to form ice crystals, but those aren't a concern for launch. Engine chill began about 4 minutes ago. It's important to get the engines to the same temperature as the propellants so that the liquid oxygen does not suddenly turn into a gas upon contact with the much warmer plumbing, among other things.
Yeah, so one of the things that I love about this, and this is kind of where we fit into this whole thing, is SpaceX does do 2 weather balloon launches in preparation for their rocket flights. So the only way for them to gauge those upper level winds is to do 2 weather balloon launches to measure the upper level winds.
In Florida to watch today's launch of GovSat-1. In particular, we would like to extend a warm welcome to the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister of Luxembourg, as well as their Royal Highnesses, the Prince and Princess of Luxembourg, all of whom are watching today's launch in person from Florida.
All right, those must be our special guests. That since this GovSat-1 is a communications satellite for the government of Luxembourg, those are our special guests that are going to be watching along here. So we should be looking at launch here in about 5 minutes here. Let's see, I did want to show, here's the mission details. We can take a look at this.
GovSat is a brand operated by LuxGovSat SA, a public-private joint venture company between the Luxembourg government and SES, the world-leading satellite operator. Our mission is to provide secure, reliable, and accessible governmental satellite communication services to address the demand resulting from defense and institutional security applications. GovSat-1 will be a multi-mission satellite, which will use X-band and military Ka-band transponders with wide beams, as well as with high-powered and fully steerable mission beams. As a geosatellite, GovSat-1 will provide superior, accurate, real-time information wherever it is required. Over Europe, Africa, Middle East, and substantial maritime coverage over the Mediterranean and Baltic Seas, as well as over the Atlantic and Indian Oceans.
We are coming up on T-minus 4 minutes before launch. We are tracking no issues at the moment. We've just finished up loading up the helium that's pressurizing the first and second stages, and we're in the very final stages of liquid oxygen and RP1 loading. By loading those propellants so close to launch, we can keep them very cold. And being denser, that means we can load a little bit more of each of those propellants onto the vehicle. We're also performing some final communications checks with the full Falcon 9, and also testing the thrust vector control system, which basically wiggles the engines to make sure that those are properly able to steer Falcon 9 during ascent.
Yep, so far no issues that they're tracking right now. So one of the big differences, it's nice to look at all these different launch vehicle companies. ULA they go all the way up to 4 minutes, and then they hold at 4 minutes for a really long time. SpaceX is a little bit different. They have their countdown goes pretty much right all the way to 0. I don't know if they have any built-in holds that I know of, at least, but just looking at their normal countdown procedure, they don't typically have those built-in holds that I've noticed. So you see some venting going on. That's completely normal. We're going to have... Actually, you can hear some of the venting if I turn this up a little bit while I talk. So you let me know if that gets too loud. Try not to make it too loud here. But you can hear a little bit of the venting. So we're at 2 minutes here. So we should be, the flight computer will be doing the final checks here shortly. Tanks are going to be pressurized. About 45 seconds. We'll hear the launch director.
Stage 2 LUX load is closed out.
Go for launch here in about a minute. We're going to get engine start at 3 seconds, and then liftoff at 0. And then what we should have is we're going to go, satellite deployment is at 32 minutes. So it is a long time. Depends on how well the mission is going, whether we stick around the whole time. But we
vehicles
should
and self-line
potentially have somewhere around 450. Another big vent there. So right around 450 is when we should have deployment, somewhere, or 455 rather, is when we should have deployment of the satellite. But that first stage
AFTS is ready for launch.
First stage shutdown should be about 2.5 minutes in. Then we'll
Falcon 9 is in startup.
The first separation there. And I'm going to let them talk and get us all the way down to the countdown here. See if this goes.
Launch directors go for launch.
Launch directors go.
Minus 30 seconds. Minus 15 seconds. Stand by for terminal count. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, Ignition. Liftoff.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Right on time.
Power and telemetry nominal.
And there you saw a successful liftoff of the Falcon 9. Stage 1 propulsion all looking nominal. Beautiful clear shot of Falcon 9 ascending through the Florida sky there. About to go through supersonic. May see a sonic boom with this sort of clear sky.
That would be pretty nice to see. I wonder if we'll actually get to see the sonic boom.
Coming up shortly, we're about to enter max Q. That's the point of maximum aerodynamic pressure when the rocket is pushing hardest against the atmosphere.
Vehicle has passed through max Q.
So
We've
max
successfully
Q's at
passed through that
118.
point. That's always a major milestone in every rocket launch.
Impact engine chill.
We've just begun chilling the second stage engine for the same reason that we chill the first stage engine, to make sure that it's ready to be at the right temperature, the same temperature as the propellant. Coming up about 30 seconds from now, we're going to have a few events in quick succession. The first stage engines are going to cut off. The two
Recovery vessel has AOS.
The two stages will separate, and the second stage will ignite.
Yeah, right about 2:38 is when we're expecting first stage shutdown.
You can see the plumes fading away as the rocket is getting out of the atmosphere. Trajectory is still looking good, and those three events, main engine cutoff, separation, and second stage ignition, happening right now.
There's cutoff and separation.
Maybe you go.
Stage separation has confirmed.
There's the second stage.
And there you saw it.
Ignition.
First stage successfully cut off, the two stages separated, and then the second stage has begun its burn. You saw the retaining ring fall away, and that protects the MVAC, Merlin vacuum engine nozzle during shipping. Again, we are not recovering the first stage on this mission, but we are about 30 seconds away from fairing deploy. The fairing protects the satellite during ascent, but it's not necessary once you get out of the atmosphere, and so we'll let it fall back to Earth to keep that
Stage 2
propellant
following nominal trajectory.
available to loft more satellite.
Fairing separation confirmed.
There's fairing separation.
And we've got confirmation of the fairings separating. You can see one of the fairing halves in the screen behind the second stage engine there.
Back here. Oh, there it goes.
Beautiful clear shot of second stage against the Earth background.
So our next
Acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
next expected event would be the second stage cutoff. That's going to be at about 8 minutes and 35 seconds here is when we expect second stage cutoff. So we got some time here before second stage cutoff.
Trajectory for stage 2 is still nominal. This burn is going to continue for about another 4 minutes, at which point the second stage will then turn off its engine and have a coast phase for about 17 minutes. It'll be in a parking orbit at that time, and the coast phase will be preparing for the second burn, which will push the satellite into its geostationary transfer orbit.
Yeah, and so I don't know, I don't know exactly, what their orbital path is. But typically they would do, the kind of the most basic orbital maneuver that they would do is called a Hohmann transfer. And that's why they have that coast in there. So
We're about T plus 5 minutes and 20 seconds at the moment.
So typically what they would do is...
At about this time, the first stage would be on its way back to the drone ship. And it's weirder to consider that we're not actually recovering this one. SpaceX has landed, I think it's about 20 first stages at this point. And the goal is for each first stage to last tens of launches in the short term and hundreds or thousands of launches in the long term.
Yeah, and I don't know, I still am not clear on the exact reason why they're not recovering this first stage. It seems like they've got the drone ship there. I don't exactly know why they're not recovering. I don't know if my Facebook live video is working here. Yeah, it doesn't seem like I don't know if that's just my phone or if our Facebook live stopped working.
And that second stage burn going to continue for another.
But I can't get access to it, so I don't know if seems like it's working. Maybe it's just my phone. I just couldn't access the video to see comments and things like that. So
Stage 1 entry burn has started.
So they are talking about stage 1 entry burn. So it sounds like they're going to do. I turned the volume down a little bit here, but so they just said stage 1 entry burn has started. So it sounds like they're going to do a controlled soft landing.
And stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
There's stage 1 entry burn shutdown. So I think they're going to do a controlled soft landing.
You just heard the call out that stage 1 had its entry burn start and then shut down. While we are having a re-entry burn, we are not recovering the first stage.
Right, so they're not recovering it, but I don't know. Maybe that burn is just
T plus 7 minutes and 20 seconds.
Maybe that burn is just to get it back into the hazard area that they defined in the ocean.
1 minute remaining in this first burn to get to a low altitude parking orbit for GovSat-1.
But yeah, I'm not exactly sure why they're not recovering it. May have something to do with Falcon Heavy. May have something to do with Falcon Heavy next week. Maybe they want to save the drone ship, don't want to risk, some kind of failed landing.
LOS, Cape Canaveral, stage 1, as expected.
So LOS.
Stage 2 is under terminal guidance.
The loss of signal, I believe.
Stage 2, AFTS has saved.
We're about 30 seconds away from the second engine cutoff event. You'll be able to see that on your screen.
Yeah, right about 8:35 is when we're expecting second engine cutoff. So about 10 seconds here. We should see that
Stage 1 landing burn has started.
Stop glowing here.
Legs have deployed. And stage 1 splashdown. We have SECO.
So we're at
LOS, Cape Canaveral, stage 2, as expected.
You may have heard that the first stage had its splashdown. Again, that was not a recovery of the first stage. That was an expected splashdown. The second engine cutoff event was confirmed, as well as a good parking orbit. And there you can see second stage in space, coasting in that parking orbit. It'll be doing that for about another 17 minutes or so, at which point the second stage will burn for about another minute to change it from that low altitude parking orbit into the geostationary transfer orbit. We're going to take a break during that time, but you can see the progress of the second stage on the animation on your screen. Currently a few hundred miles east of the Florida coast. We'll be resuming coverage at about T plus 25 minutes or so. So stay tuned and we'll see you shortly.
All right, so sounds like everything is on track here. We'll get the let's take my headphones off here, and we'll keep this up here on the screen. Let's see, I can switch. Well, we'll leave this up here for right now. The rocket's more interesting than looking at me. So you can at least see what's going on with the rocket there. So Falcon 9, the upper stage is we're at second engine shutdown. We're in the coast phase now. That should be going on for it's about 15 or so minutes. I can look at my little timeline here. So it's going to restart at 26:40 on the clock. So we're about almost exactly it's about 16 minutes from now. So that's when we'll be looking at that second stage starting back up again. And that's just a quick burn. That's only going to last just over a minute, and then a few minutes later we'll have satellite deployment. So we got a little bit of time here while we're in this coast phase. So now we can kind of talk about some of the other things that I didn't get to before the launch, because that actually happened pretty quickly and pretty successfully. So right down to 4:25 p.m. Eastern time on the dot, we launched right on time. So everything is looking good at the moment. One thing, I still don't exactly know what's going on here, but let me pull up. I'm gonna pull up some info for you, and we can take a look. Let's see. Just give me 1 second here to get this pulled up. And I probably should put let me get the SpaceX broadcast in here so we can see that. Well, what I'm looking at here, we can look at this for a second. Let me change this here. Just want to get this up here in the corner, or maybe just below me. How's that? Oh, I can move this like this. Okay, that's what I'm trying to do. Hold this on the screen. Let me turn that down. Sorry, I saw the audio go crazy. So we'll turn that back down. But anyways, what I wanted to talk about was that first stage. Normally we would have recovered the first stage, but I don't exactly know why we didn't recover the first stage. But this, what we're looking at here, this is the hazard area that's defined for this launch. You've got your typical hazard area for right around the launch pad here. You've got these are basically like the keep away areas. So a couple different areas defined. They're all defined here on the left side, which you can't see because it's underneath my screen here. But we've got there's the space wing launch hazard. We've got some safety zones. So it's basically like some land safety zones, some air safety zones. This is the area that's defined as, get out of the way, there's a rocket coming through. But one of the other things that they defined for safety zones here was out in this region. And that is the blue one here is the booster recovery. And the green one is the fairing recovery. So they... or I guess booster water landing. I shouldn't say booster recovery, because they did not recover this booster. They left the autonomous spaceport drone ship in port. So of course I Still Love You did not come along for the ride. But they did, if you were listening to the call outs, they did deploy the legs, bring it all the way back down, and basically run through the whole thing like they were going to land it. I mean, they didn't just let this thing come flying down and smash into a bajillion pieces. They actually did it somewhat gracefully, and they landed this. They brought it down. They deployed the landing legs. I don't know why they did that. But then splashed down, and then presumably it made a big boom. I kind of wish we could have seen that, but so the blue one there, that's where the splashdown occurred, and then the green one is where they expect to recover the fairing. And some of the big news from the last couple of weeks has been this fairing recovery boat called Mr. Steven. That's out on the West Coast, but it's this big, like, upside down claw looking thing, this boat that's got these claws on it like this, that a lot of people have talked about maybe it's going to be for fairing recovery. Not sure. I'd be interested to see what they're going to do with that and how that's going to operate. But they do have this boat called Mr. Steven that's out on the West Coast, not here for this particular launch. So everything going well so far. Still in the coast stage here. Let's look at a couple other things here that I had. Let's see. So, yeah, when I was getting all those timings, I was using the press kit here from SpaceX. So this is basically where I was getting all the timings there. So we've gone through pretty much everything shown here. We are basically our last three stages here are right here at the bottom. We're waiting for second engine restart at 2640. Then that's going to cut off at 2748, and then deployment at 3219. And then let's see what else. So then the other thing that's of interest here for this particular flight, this is not NROL or NROL, National Reconnaissance Office. The NROL 76 mission was actually the first mission to use this Falcon. Was it this Falcon 9? I believe it's this Falcon 9. So I think this is a reused Falcon 9 stage. Where's my press kit there? Yeah, there it is. Now I'm wondering if I got my Falcon 9 and my Falcon Heavy confused. Pretty sure, yeah, there it is, NROL 76. So, okay, I was right. Just making sure I didn't get my Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy confused. But so the rocket that just launched today, that the first stage was initially used on this NROL 76 mission back in May. So it was landed, recovered, and launched again here for GovSat-1. So that's one of the awesome things about SpaceX, is how well they can reuse their that first stage there, especially with that crazy water landing that they have. So let's see. Let me go back to my pictures here. So that's GovSat-1. That's what we were launching. Let's see. So a couple comments here, actually, before I get to that. Let's see. There's a supermoon in Wales right now. Go see. Oh, well, I saw the supermoon this morning. I've been up since 5 o'clock this morning, so about 12 hours now. So I was all over the supermoon and the blue moon and the blood moon. Watched the eclipse this morning. So I took a look at that. I didn't know that, well, I mean, it would make sense if there's still a supermoon going on right now. So I guess, yeah, if Lynn James on YouTube, if you still see that, yeah, definitely go take a peek at it. Mayor, I'm from India. Where are you from? We're in Rochester, New York. So not New York City. A lot of people, you hear New York, they think New York City. We're not in New York City. We are in New York State, but we're still about a 6-hour drive from New York City up in Rochester, New York. So that's where we are. And that's where we're broadcasting from now, watching this launch here. Let's see. Let me get for some reason, I don't know if this is actually going on Facebook as well, or if this is just me. But my Facebook app keeps crashing. And I'm trying to watch, or I'm trying to get my video back up so I can see the comment. It looks like it's playing just fine. So if you're on Facebook, shoot me a little message. Let me know if this is coming through all right on Facebook. The YouTube one looks like it's going just fine. That doesn't seem to be an issue here at the moment. So YouTube seems to be streaming fine. But usually when I do these things, I do YouTube and Facebook at the same time. So I think they're going okay. So we're trying to get all the kinks worked out so that next week, come Falcon Heavy time on Tuesday, we want to make sure there's no kinks in this thing, because Falcon Heavy is going to be, that's the launch that we want to see, for sure. Not that this was, you know, there's nothing wrong with this one, but Falcon Heavy is definitely the one that I'm pumped about. Oh, and I was also going to show, so we saw in the press kit there, they had the mission patch shown in the press kit. Figured I'd show this here in a little larger view. So there's the GovSat-1 mission patch. So GovSat-1, again, you know, we touched on it earlier, but GovSat-1 is a communication satellite using military bands. It's for the government of Luxembourg. So I said earlier, I hate using the word, but it's kind of a routine launch for SpaceX. I hate the word routine when it comes to space flight, but I don't know how else to describe it. You know, it's kind of, they're starting to do a lot of these. They're doing a lot of communication satellites, and they're doing them quite reliably. So I don't want to jinx the process, but they are, you know, today's launch, not a single issue. I mean, they were supposed to launch yesterday, but they scrubbed it really for the weather, was the big issue yesterday. But today's launch, the opening of the launch window was 4:25 p.m. and they launched at 4:25 p.m. So they're doing a pretty spot-on job here of getting these Falcon 9s going. And so now we're just waiting for another couple minutes here. We're waiting on the satellite deployment, which is coming up in about 10 minutes. But before that, we should get another burn in that will happen in about just under 4 minutes here to get the payload into its intended orbit here. I'm going to take a drink real quick. Been talking for so long. Anyways, so I'm sure there's some more advanced orbital transfer maneuvers, but you know, the one that I know personally is called the Hohmann transfer. It's the only one I can use in Kerbal Space Program. But you know, basically, it's you would launch into basically a suborbital trajectory, or maybe even a parking orbit, and then if you're going to transfer into a larger orbit, you would basically wait until you get to the apogee, which is the highest point in your orbit, burn the engines again, and if you're, I don't know how to describe this, I probably should have had a graphic for this, but if you're in orbit and you're at the apogee, when you burn on this side of the orbit, the other side of the orbit is what extends out further. So I'll get a graphic for that, or we could just play Kerbal Space Program one time and we can show you what that looks like. But presumably that's what we're looking for here. You know, without being a SpaceX rocket scientist, I don't know exactly what they're doing for their orbital maneuvers, but that's presumably what's going on here. So, oh, I don't know what just happened there. Oh, there we go. The map was freaking out for a minute. Oh, so you got that smaller here. Let's make the map bigger for you. There we go. We can make that a little bit bigger so that you can actually see some speed and some altitude. Let's see, we don't need the weather report anymore. I've got some of my resources here. I was looking at the weather report, making sure that was staying on track, so that's done. We looked at the hazard area. What are your thoughts on Voyager 1 and Voyager 2? I think it's, I don't know what my thoughts are. I think it's incredible. I would love to see us get back to you know, a company like SpaceX or any of these new private companies. I don't know if there's any money in that though, but I'd love to see us get back to the you know, these big lofty exploration goals like Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 had. I mean, for that to have gone on for as long as it has, and you know, still be sending back data is just amazing. I'd love to see us get back to that someday. You know, maybe NASA will get back to that, and we will, or we, I say we, like I'm involved. And SpaceX will focus more on the commercial side with launching satellites and you know, maybe even crewed missions, things like that. But I don't know. I'd love to see us get back to that kind of stuff. So I'm going to hit the volume here. It sounds like they're talking again.
Burn is coming up just a few moments from now.
Now I don't hear. Of course, they said they were talking. Oh, there we go. There's our second stage going.
And there we have it. A second stage ignition for the second burn. And that will greatly increase the final altitude of GovSat-1 in order for it to be able to move itself into the correct position at 36,000 kilometers.
So there's our second engine restart. This should only last not very long, just like a minute or so.
Oh, we've moved so far east at this point. We're just off the western coast of Africa that we're very much in nighttime, which is why you can no longer see Earth in the background.
Yeah, already. So we launched from Florida, what, half an hour ago? We're already sitting over southern Africa.
That second stage burn continuing for a few more seconds. And then we have shutdown. We'll take a few moments to confirm that we're in the correct geostationary transfer orbit. And then a few minutes to make sure that the satellite is healthy.
GNC confirms good orbit insertion.
And we just got confirmation that the geostationary transfer orbit is in fact good, which is just the way we like it. We're going to take a few minutes now to make sure the payload is healthy and prepare for that payload deploy, which is the final step of the mission for SpaceX.
So yeah, we just heard
payload deploy is coming up in a few minutes from now, so we'll take a quick break.
They're
Stay tuned.
going to take a break here. So they are they're in a good orbit. They're exactly where they want to be. So, I mean, so far everything is going flawlessly. So we should have the very final event coming up here before we end it is going to be that payload separation, basically the deployment of GovSat-1. We're going to have that separated and put into super synchronous transfer orbit. And so we're just waiting on that. That's only a couple minutes here. That's supposed to be at 32 minutes and 19 seconds. So as long as everything's on track, look for that 32:19 on the counter here for that to happen. Let's see, I don't remember what we were talking about earlier. Just checking to make sure everything looks good, and everything that I'm reading here on the report says it looks good. A lot of controversy about that that first stage booster on the no recovery. Some people upset online about that on the Twitter machine, but yeah. So that first stage, they did do a controlled descent. You know, it's been planned for a long time that first stage was going to be expendable. They were not going to recover it. That wasn't really a surprise. Wasn't a game day decision. Wasn't even a decision in the last couple of weeks. It's been known for quite a while that they were going to let that first stage perish in the ocean waters, basically. But they did have the landing legs and the grid fins on it, and you know, if they're gonna destroy this booster, then why not do a couple tests in the meantime? You know, so presumably they're probably testing their landing capabilities, making sure that everything would have gone fine if there was a recovery ship there. So they're doing some tests, and I'm sure they want to get some extra data for Falcon Heavy coming up Tuesday. Don't miss it. So trust me, I'm here. Oh, hi Ken, good to see you. Trust me, I'm here. Oh, they're talking again here.
For SpaceX is the payload deploy step, when we release the satellite from the second stage and allow it to continue on its geostationary transfer orbit, at which point it will circularize its orbit at 36,000 kilometers at 21.5 degrees east.
36,000 kilometers.
And that payload deploy is going to look just like a gentle push away from the second stage. And it looks like we'll be having good live video of that.
My metric measurements.
That payload deploy event coming up in just about 10 seconds from now.
10 seconds, or less than 10 here. So 5 seconds payload deployment. There it goes.
Base up. Spacecraft separation confirmed.
And there we have it. Successful deploy of the payload, nice and smooth, and confirmed separation, just the way we like it. That concludes the live webcast and SpaceX's portion of today's mission. Thank you very much to GovSat-1 and SES for choosing us for this launch. Thank you to the Range and FAA for your support, and thank you for tuning in to watch today's mission. If you'd like to join us on our mission here at launching satellites and getting to Mars, check us out at spacex.com/careers. Otherwise, look for further updates on our social media accounts, including for Falcon Heavy, which is currently targeted for February 6th. Thanks again for joining us.
All right, well, there we go. So that's our Falcon Heavy. I guess I don't need these headphones anymore, but that's our Falcon Heavy. That's our Falcon 9 launch. Wow, look at this hair. That's our Falcon 9 launch for today for GovSat-1. I couldn't have gone any better for SpaceX. Like, that was perfect. Right on the money. Launched right on time. First try. Up, no issues. Payload deployment, just that little gentle push at the end. And it'll be good to go. So that's pretty much what we're looking at here. The satellite does have its own orbit and will. Oh, hey, this is an advertisement here. Samantha B. We don't need that. Let's get rid of that here. We don't need that anymore. Guess they ended that. So the satellite does have its own engine, and it will reshape its orbit over the next couple weeks to get to a perfectly circular orbit. It's going to be about it's like 22,000 miles. I think it's 22,300 miles over. It's going to be right over the equator, and it's 21.5 degrees to the east. So it does have its own engine. It will have It's going to do that orbital correction, and that's pretty normal for most satellites. Kind of the launch provider puts them into a really close orbit, where then the satellite just needs minimal effort over the next couple of weeks to correct its orbit. And that's because they'll probably do a dozen or so orbital corrections, maybe even more, over the next couple of weeks to circularize that orbit and get it ready for operation. So typically, like once you put the satellite into orbit, it's not like it switches on and it's good to go right from there. Most of the time it gets into its insertion orbit, and then it will take the next couple of weeks to get itself corrected exactly where they want it to be, and then it goes into service. And these missions are usually 5, 10, 15 years. So a couple of weeks at the beginning of no use is nothing after they probably spent months or years getting it ready, and then they're going to spend years operating it. So that's what we're looking at here. That's the Falcon 9 launch. Everything went perfectly, and we're gonna wrap things up here. Appreciate you sticking around. Caprina says fabulous. I agree. Thanks for hanging out with us for a little bit on Facebook. If you're watching us on YouTube, Don Del Negro. Oh, I missed it. Sorry, Don. Well, as soon as we end the broadcast, you'll be able to replay it, watch it over again. They did get it into successful orbit, so it's good to go. If you missed it, definitely watch the replay, because it was a flawless launch. Absolutely nothing went wrong. So that's what we like to hear when it comes to rocket launches, especially for SpaceX. For any of them really. But I know SpaceX has that. They've got the Falcon Heavy coming up next week, so it was going to be real critical to make sure that nothing went wrong with the Falcon 9 itself. The worst thing you'd have happen is something go wrong with Falcon 9, and now they have to stand down to investigate. And the Falcon Heavy really has 3 Falcon 9s strapped together. So anyway, successful today. Definitely hit that reminder button, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Facebook. Next Tuesday around 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we will be broadcasting the Falcon Heavy launch, as long as everything's on time and going. Probably about 1:30 is the opening of the window. We'll keep an eye on the launch countdown and try to start the broadcast about half an hour before we think they're going to go. I don't know when that's going to be. But first try is no earlier than Tuesday. So keep an eye out Tuesday for the Falcon Heavy. Falcon Heavy is going to be a big deal. We got to see this. So that's it. That's all I got. So, Caprina, thank you. Have a wonderful night. Thank you very much. You as well. Everybody have a good night. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Hopefully the broadcast worked out well for today. We'll try to refine it and fine-tune some things for Falcon Heavy coming up next week. But other than that, thanks again, everybody. Have a good rest of the night. Thanks for watching.